The massive holographic display in the Galactic Council's Strategic Analysis Chamber cast a pale blue light over Admiral Jessica Hayes' face as she watched the alien diplomats circle the projection of the TCS mountain home. Their expressions, or what passed for expressions among the various species, ranged from confusion to outright disbelief. "This cannot be correct," declared High Engineer Zixtal, his crystalline form refracting light in what humans had learned to recognize as agitation. "Your vessel's mass-to-volume ratio exceeds all known parameters for efficient space combat." Hayes maintained her professional composure, though the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. "I assure you, the schematics are accurate. The mountain home represents our standard battleship configuration." A Volscian observer, their gas-filled environment suits swirling with patterns of confusion, floated forward. "But where are the primary shield generators? We see only these primitive armor layers." "The shield generators are here, here, and here." Hayes pointed to various sections of the hologram. "We have 3 independent systems." The chamber erupted in murmurs, and the equivalent of head-shaking among the assembled species. Chief Military Analyst Krenfox, a towering insectoid, clicked his mandibles in what the diplomatic corps had labeled as extreme skepticism. 3 independent shield systems. The power requirements alone wooled. Each runs at 33% capacity during standard operations, Hayes interrupted, highlighting the power distribution network. If one falls, the others compensate. If 2 fall, the third reroutes emergency power to cover critical sections. But that's... Zixtal's crystalline structure actually dimmed in shock. Inefficient. Wasteful. One system at full power would provide better protection. Hayes stepped forward, expanding the hologram to show the layers beneath the shields. "The shields aren't our primary defense, High Engineer. They're just the first layer." The revelation of what lay beneath those shields caused several junior analysts to leave the chamber. Layer after layer of ablative armor, point defense systems, internal bulkheads, and redundant systems filled the display. The mountain home wasn't so much a ship as it was a series of ships nested within each other, each layer capable of operating independently if the others failed. "This is madness," Krenfox declared. "Your species has achieved faster than light travel. Surely you understand the principles of energy shield technology." "We understand them perfectly," Hayes replied, her voice taking on an edge of steel. "We also understand they can fail. Everything can fail. So we plan for it." The hologram shifted again, this time showing a simulation of the mountain home under attack. As systems failed, others activated. As sections were destroyed, the ship adapted, rerouted, and kept fighting. Even when the simulation showed the vessel taking damage that would have destroyed any other known ship 3 times over, it continued to function. "By the void," whispered the Volscian observer. "You built your ships expecting them to be destroyed." "No," Hayes corrected, her eyes reflecting the holographic carnage. "We built them refusing to be destroyed." "There's a difference." The simulation continued, showing how even catastrophic damage to multiple systems resulted in new configurations, the ship's design allowing it to adapt and fight in ways its enemies could never predict. What the aliens saw as inefficiency was actually flexibility, a flexibility born from humanity's long history of warfare and engineering. "This violates every principle of modern space combat," Zixtal stated, but his tone had changed from dismissive to worried. "A ship should be elegant, efficient, optimized." "With all due respect, High Engineer," Hayes said, shutting down the hologram with a gesture, "we're not interested in elegant. We're interested in surviving. And you can't optimize survival. You can only prepare for everything that might kill you." As the alien delegation filed out of the chamber, still muttering among themselves, Hayes caught fragments of their conversations. They spoke of waste, of inefficiency, of primitive thinking. But she also heard something else in their voices: Fear. They had come expecting to find a young species still learning the basics of space combat. Instead, they found one that had looked at the elegant solutions of their galactic neighbors and chosen a different path, a path paved with redundancy, resilience, and a deep-seated understanding that in space, anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and humanity would be ready when it did. Commander Mike Anderson stood on the bridge of the TCS Relentless, his weathered features illuminated by the tactical display, showing 3 hegemony dreadnoughts bearing down on his position. The massive vessels, each nearly twice the size of his ship, bristled with energy weapons that the intelligence corps had dubbed shield breakers. "They're charging weapons, sir," reported Lieutenant Sarah Martinez from the tactical station. Her fingers danced across the haptic interface, bringing up detailed scans. Energy signatures match previous encounters. They're running hot. Anderson nodded, taking a sip from his coffee mug, as calmly as if he were watching a training exercise. "Status of our layered defense systems. All green, Commander." Chief Engineer Robert Bob Walker's voice crackled over the comm. "Primary, secondary, and tertiary shields are operating at standard capacity. Ablative armor is primed, and all-point defense networks are online. The lead hegemony vessel, its hull gleaming with the characteristic purple-white sheen of their advanced alloys, launched the first salvo. Brilliant beams of energy lanced through space, designed to overwhelm and penetrate any known shield system. Impact in 3, 2, 1. Martins counted down. The hits came in rapid succession. The bridge crew barely felt a tremor. "Primary shields holding at 92%, Walker reported, almost sounding disappointed. "No bleed-through to secondary systems." The alien vessels paused, their next attack delayed by what Anderson recognized as confusion. The hegemony, like most galactic powers, relied on overwhelming force applied to a single point, a strategy that worked well against traditional shield systems. "They're realigning their weapon arrays," Martins observed, "concentrating fire on our forward section." Anderson allowed himself a small smile. "Exactly as expected. Chief Walker, initiate Protocol Echo 7. "Echo 7. Aye, sir." Diverting power to forward shield grid and activating the honeycomb. The second barrage hit harder than the first. Energy weapons designed to shatter shield matrices found themselves instead spreading across a complex web of overlapping defense systems. What the hegemony didn't understand was that human shields weren't meant to be impenetrable. They were meant to direct and disperse energy in useful ways. "Primary shields down to 60%, Walker reported. "Secondary grid is absorbing the overflow." "Sir, they're actually charging our capacitor banks." Anderson's smile widened. "How long until we're at optimal charge?" 2 more salvos should do it, Commander. "They're literally giving us all the power we need." The bridge crew maintained their professional demeanor, but there was an undercurrent of anticipation in the air. This wasn't the first time an alien force had underestimated human engineering, and it probably wouldn't be the last. The third barrage came, more powerful than the previous 2 combined. The hegemony ships had moved into a triangle formation, focusing all their firepower on what they perceived as the Relentless's weakening defenses. "Primary shields critical," Walker announced. "Switching to secondaries. Now." The transition was seamless. Where other species' ships would have been exposed during the shield change, the Relentless's layered defenses meant there wasn't even a microsecond of vulnerability. "Capacitors at maximum safe charge, sir," Martins reported. "Permission to return the favor." Anderson set down his coffee mug and straightened his uniform. "Show them why we call it the Relentless, Lieutenant. All batteries, fire at will." The human vessel's response transformed the space battle into a lesson in physics. Using the energy absorbed from the hegemony's own attacks, the Relentless launched a devastating counterstrike. Each hit was calculated not just to damage, but to cascade through the aliens' much-vaunted shield systems. Direct hits on all 3 vessels, Martins announced. Their shields are, sir, their shields are just gone. Complete collapse of their defense grid. The hegemony ships, suddenly exposed and vulnerable, began to retreat. Their elegant design philosophy had never accounted for a species that would build warships capable of turning an enemy's strength against them. Hold fire, Anderson commanded. Let them go. They've learned an important lesson today. As the alien vessels limped away, their once pristine hulls scared, and their pride wounded even more deeply, Anderson turned to his crew. Log this encounter. Command will want to know that the new defense protocols work even better than projected. The message was clear. Humanity didn't just build ships to survive. They built them to win. Lieutenant Emily Roberts raced through the smoke-filled corridors of the TCS Defiant, her damage control team close behind. Warning klaxons echoed through the ship as another volley from the hegemony fleet struck their starboard side. Status report. She barked into her comm unit, sliding down a maintenance ladder to Deck 7. Port side engine matrix is running at 115% to compensate, responded Chief Engineer Marcus Thompson. But we're looking at total failure of starboard cooling systems in 10 minutes. Roberts reached a junction and pressed her hand against a biometric panel. A hidden access door slid open, revealing a maze of backup systems that would have made any alien engineer question their sanity. Team Alpha, start rerouting coolant through the secondary network, she ordered. Beta Team, we're going to try something new. Her engineers moved with practiced efficiency, but even they paused when she started pulling components from what looked like a solid bulkhead. The wall itself was actually a dormant system, designed to activate only when primary systems failed. Ma'am, Technician James Cooper called out, "Are we really going to crosswire the backup cooling system with the emergency shield generator?" "That's exactly what we're going to do," Roberts replied, her hands moving with surgical precision. "The aliens think they found a weakness in our starboard defense. Let's show them why human ships get stronger when they're damaged." The ship shuddered again as another hit landed. Through her comm, Roberts could hear the bridge crew reporting shield failures across multiple sectors. But she smiled. They were only talking about the obvious shields. "Rerouting power now," she announced. "Bridge, this is damage control. You're about to see something interesting on your monitors." On the bridge, Captain Laura Mitchell watched in amazement as new power signatures bloomed across the Defiant's diagnostic display. The hegemony ships had concentrated their fire on what they thought was a vulnerable section, only to find their attacks being absorbed and redirected in ways their sensors couldn't even process. "They've stopped firing," the tactical officer reported. I think they're trying to figure out what we just did." Robert's voice came through the bridge speakers, slightly distorted by static. "Captain, we've successfully converted the damaged sections into an improvised energy sink. Every hit they land now is actually reinforcing our structural integrity. The alien vessels, their formation perfect, and their tactics by the book, had no protocol for dealing with a ship that deliberately used its damaged systems to create new defensive capabilities." Their hesitation gave Roberts and her team time to implement even more modifications. "Chief Thompson," she called out, "remember that idea we discussed during last week's poker game? The one about using destroyed shield emitters as focusing lenses?" "You can't be serious." Thompson's voice carried equal parts concern and excitement. "That was pure theory. We were 3 beers in." "Sometimes the best engineering happens over beer," Roberts replied, already moving to the next access panel. "Beta Team with me. We're about to test that theory." What followed was a display of engineering that would have made their academy professors either proud or horrified. Possibly both. Roberts and her team turned what the hegemony saw as fatal damage into a series of impromptu weapons platforms, using the very systems the aliens had destroyed. Energy spike from the enemy fleet, Tactical reported. They're coming around for another pass. Perfect timing, Roberts said, making one final adjustment. Captain, requesting permission to show them our new tricks. Captain Mitchell's response was immediate. Lieutenant Roberts, you have a green light. Make it count. The hegemony fleet's next attack was met not with desperate defense, but with a display of technical innovation that would be studied in engineering schools for years to come. The Defiant's damaged sections lit up with repurposed energy, turning the ship's wounds into weapons. Direct hits across their formation, Tactical announced, unable to keep the awe from their voice. They're breaking off. They're actually running away. In the aftermath, as damage control teams continued their work, Roberts found a moment to catch her breath. She looked at the improvised systems her team had created, each one a testament to human ingenuity and the philosophy that had shaped their approach to space combat. There was no such thing as a fatal blow to a ship that was designed to turn damage into advantage. Just another day at the office, she muttered, already planning how to improve their next emergency innovation. Dr. James Thompson strode across the holographic presentation chamber at the lunar shipyards, his audience of alien dignitaries following with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The massive display behind him showed the cross-section of the latest dreadnought-class vessel, the TCS Indomitable. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings of all species, he began, adjusting his well-worn engineering badge. Today, we'll address what you've all been asking. Why do human ships refuse to die? A ripple of movement passed through the audience. The recent battles had made human vessel durability a hot topic among galactic military circles. This, Thompson said, expanding a section of the hologram, is what we call the Murphy Protocol, named after an ancient human law that states, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. The display zoomed into the ship's power distribution network, showing layers upon layers of redundant systems. A Methulian ambassador raised one of their sensory appendages. But Doctor, your approach defies basic space combat doctrine. The mass dedicated to these backup systems could be used for more powerful weapons or shields. Thompson smiled, pressing a button on his controller. The hologram shifted, showing the ship split clean in half. Watch this. To the aliens' astonishment, both halves of the vessel continued to function. Shields active, weapons firing. Each section operated as an independent warship, smaller but still lethal. We don't build ships, Thompson explained. We build fighting cities that can break apart into fighting towns, and those towns can break down into fighting villages if necessary. He walked through the hologram, his figure distorting the light as he passed through each layer. Every section you see here is a self-contained unit. Power, life support, weapons, shields, everything needed to continue the fight. A Volscian representative floated forward, their environment suit swirling with patterns of confusion. The resource investment must be astronomical. How do you justify such redundancy? Simple cost-benefit analysis, Thompson replied, pulling up combat footage from recent engagements. How much does it cost to lose a ship and its entire crew? How much does it cost to lose a battle because your vessels can't take a punch? The footage showed human ships taking devastating hits that would have vaporized most vessels, yet continuing to fight. In one particularly impressive sequence, a cruiser lost 40% of its mass, yet managed to disable 3 enemy capital ships before retreating. This is the Huntley incident, Thompson narrated. The U.S. Steadfast lost all primary systems in the first exchange. By your standards, it should have been dead in space. Instead, it activated its secondary systems, then its tertiaries when those failed. The crew actually improved their combat effectiveness as the battle progressed, learning from each hit they took. He paused the footage on an image of the damaged but victorious vessel. We call it combat evolution. Every time you think you've killed a human ship, it comes back with a new trick. The alien observers murmured among themselves, their various communication methods creating a symphony of concern and fascination. And Elder Crystal finally spoke up. But surely there must be a breaking point, a threshold of damage beyond which even your redundancies cannot compensate. Thompson's expression grew serious. Of course there is. We're not magical, just prepared. But here's the thing. By the time you find that breaking point, you've usually lost so many of your own ships that it's a Pyrrhic victory at best. He brought up the final display, a simulation of the Indomitable under attack from multiple vectors. As systems failed, new ones activated. As sections were destroyed, the remaining pieces adapted and fought on. We don't build our ships to be invincible, Thompson concluded. We build them to be stubborn, to be resilient, to keep fighting long after the enemy thinks they should be dead. Because in space combat, the only truly fatal flaw is thinking you found the perfect solution. As the alien delegation filed out, Thompson overheard snippets of their conversations. They spoke of implementation costs, of efficiency ratios, of resource allocation, but they had missed the most important lesson. Human ships weren't built to win through superior technology or tactical doctrine. They were built to win through pure, unrelenting determination, a quality that no amount of advanced technology could match. Captain David Martinez stood on the shattered bridge of the TCS Thunderchild, emergency lighting casting red shadows across his face. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency despite the chaos of battle. The Hegemony Grand Fleet had finally arrived, bringing with them technology specifically designed to counter human resilience. Status report. He called out, gripping the rail as another impact rocked the ship. Primary systems are gone, Lieutenant Emma Foster reported from her partially melted console. Secondary systems at 12%. Hull integrity. She paused, double-checking the readings. Sir, we should be dead. Martinez nodded, a grim smile playing across his features. Initiate Protocol Lazarus. The bridge crew exchanged knowing looks. Protocol Lazarus was something they'd trained for, but never expected to use. The last resort option when everything else had failed. Engineering reports ready, Foster announced. Warning. Activating Lazarus will prevent us from receiving any further support from the fleet. They can't support what they think is already destroyed, Martinez replied. Execute. Deep within the Thunderchild's ravaged hull, systems that had appeared dead suddenly surged to life. Hidden power plants, masked from even their own fleet's sensors, began charging. The ship's apparent death throes were actually a metamorphosis. Sir, Tactical Officer James Rodriguez called out, the enemy fleet is moving past us. They've marked us as neutralized. Perfect. Martinez activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. Welcome to Plan Z. The Thunderchild's transformation was something the Hegemony's tactical computers couldn't process. Sections of the ship that appeared destroyed reconfigured themselves. Damaged weapon systems combined into new configurations that defied standard combat logic. Multiple enemy vessels coming about, Rodriguez reported. They've detected our power spike. Reading. Confusion in their formation. Martinez almost laughed at that. Confusion was an understatement. The Hegemony fleet had just watched what they thought was a dead ship turn into something their sensors couldn't even categorize. Show them why we call it the Thunderchild, he ordered. All remaining weapons, fire at will. The response was devastating. Weapons that had appeared destroyed combined their power into improvised super-heavy cannons. Damaged shield emitters created interference patterns that turned the ship's own leaking radiation into a weapon. Direct hits on 3 enemy capital ships, Rodriguez called out. "Their formations are breaking." "Sir, they're actually shooting each other in the confusion." The Thunderchild moved through the enemy fleet like a ghost ship from ancient maritime legends. It tall, crackling with energies that by all rights should have torn it apart, became a testament to human engineering gone mad. "Engineering reports critical overload in all remaining systems," Foster announced. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before everything burns out." "Then let's make them count," Martins replied. "Plot an intercept course with their command ship. Show them what a human vessel can do in its final minutes." The next few minutes would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for decades to come. The Thunderchild, moving in ways that violated multiple laws of physics, tore through the enemy formation. Each hit it took only added to its arsenal, as damaged systems were jury-rigged into new weapons on the fly. 5 minutes to total system failure, Foster reported calmly, as if reading a weather report. Martins nodded, watching the enemy command ship grow larger on their view screen. "Send one last message to the fleet. Tell them," he paused, considering. "Tell them the Thunderchild went down fighting." The bridge crew worked their stations with quiet pride. They had taken a mortally wounded ship and turned it into a legend. The hegemony had come expecting to find a weakness in human ship design. Instead, they discovered that human ships were most dangerous when they should have been dead. 2 minutes, Foster announced. Martinez straightened his uniform. "It's been an honor, everyone. Now let's show them how humans say goodbye." The Thunderchild's final charge would become the stuff of legend, a testament to the human philosophy that a ship wasn't truly beaten until its last crew member drew their last breath. And even then, as the hegemony would soon learn, dead human ships had a habit of taking their killers with them. Admiral Lisa Parker watched from the observation deck of the TCS Resilient as the joint training exercise unfolded before her. Representatives from 7 different species had brought their best ships and crews to learn the human way of space combat. The results were, to put it mildly, mixed. Vulcan cruiser experiencing total shield failure. The range control officer reported. "They're requesting immediate assistance." Parker sighed, tapping her command console. "Remind them this is a controlled exercise. Their backup systems should be engaging now." "Ma'am," the officer replied, trying to keep the amusement from his voice. "They don't have any backup systems. That was their only shield generator." On the main display, the Vulcan vessel drifted helplessly, its crew clearly panicking at the loss of their primary defense system. Next to it, a human training vessel was deliberately venting plasma, its crew practicing emergency containment procedures, as if it were a regular drill. "Stand down the exercise," Parker ordered. "All ships, return to formation. Time for another debrief." In the massive conference chamber aboard the Resilient, the alien commanders gathered, many still shaken from the training session. Captain Sarah Reynolds, Parker's chief training officer, stood before them with a patient expression. "Let's address the primary issue," Reynolds began. "When your systems fail, you freeze. You expect perfect operation, so you don't plan for failure." A Methulian commander rose, his crystalline form flickering with frustration. "With all due respect, Captain, your training scenarios are unrealistic. No ship could function after losing so many critical systems." Reynolds smiled, activating the room's holographic display. "Computer, show historical combat footage. U.S. Defiant, Battle of Proxima Delta." The assembled aliens watched in stunned silence as a human vessel, missing nearly half its hull, continued to fight effectively against multiple opponents. The Defiant's crew could be seen making repairs and modifications mid-battle, turning their damages into advantages. "This isn't about technology," Reynolds explained. "It's about mindset. Every human crew member is also trained as a damage control specialist. Every engineer is expected to be part inventor. We don't just survive failures. We exploit them. Commander Kexley of the Hegemony Observation Team raised a limb. But the resource investment required, the training hours alone would be worth every second, Parker interjected, stepping forward. Because in real combat, you don't get second chances. Your ships are magnificent when everything works perfectly. But space combat isn't perfect. It's chaos. She brought up another display, this one showing the day's exercise statistics. Notice how your crews performed in the first 10 minutes. Flawless. Better than ours, even. But the moment something went wrong. The graph showed a sharp decline in Allied performance after the first system failures. In contrast, the human vessel's effectiveness actually increased as they adapted to their damages. This is why we're here, Parker continued. Not to change your ship designs, though that would help, but to change how you think about space combat. A ship isn't just a weapon platform. It's a living thing. And like any living thing, it must be able to adapt when wounded. The alien commanders murmured among themselves, their various communication methods creating an odd symphony of doubt and curiosity. Finally, a young Vulcan officer floated forward. "Teach us," they said simply. "Show us how to think like humans." Parker and Reynolds exchanged glances. This was what they'd been waiting for. Not just allies learning their techniques, but understanding their philosophy. "Tomorrow," Parker announced, "we start with the basics. Your crews will practice deliberately sabotaging their own systems and finding ways to keep fighting. It will be uncomfortable. It will go against everything you've been taught. But by the end, you'll understand why human ships are called immortal." As the alien officers filed out, many still shaking their heads in disbelief, Parker turned to Reynolds. "Think they'll get it?" Reynolds watched the last of them leave. "Some will. The smart ones. The ones who understand that perfect systems make brittle ships. And those are the ones who'll survive their next real battle." The doctrine was spreading, not just as a set of technical specifications, but as a new way of thinking about space combat. The galaxy was learning that sometimes the most advanced technology wasn't the answer. Sometimes you just needed a ship too stubborn to die. Major Tom Reynolds stood at his battle station aboard the TCS Invincible as the Hegemony's new fleet approached. The enemy ships glowed with an ominous purple energy that their sensors couldn't quite identify. The much-vaunted human killer technology they'd spent years developing. "Multiple contacts," Lieutenant Jennifer Chen reported from the sensor station. "Reading energy signatures unlike anything we've seen before. They're using some kind of phased quantum weaponry." Reynolds nodded, his expression calm despite the tension on the bridge. "They've been studying our ships, learning our weaknesses. Let's see what they've come up with." The first salvo from the Hegemony fleet wasn't the expected energy beam or plasma burst. Instead, it was a wave of quantum disruption that passed through their shields like they weren't even there. "Direct hit," Chen called out. They're targeting our redundant systems specifically. The weapon is designed to cascade through our backup networks." Reynolds allowed himself a small smile. "Initiate contingency protocol Delta 9. "Sir," Chen's eyes widened. "That's still theoretical. We haven't even tested it in simulations. Sometimes the best testing happens in combat, Lieutenant. Execute." Throughout the Invincible, systems that had appeared to be simple structural components began to activate. The ship's hull itself transformed, revealing layers of technology that had been hidden even from their own sensors. "Quantum signature detected in their second wave," Chen reported. "Impact in 5, 4. "Redirect all power to the hull matrix," Reynolds ordered. "Let's show them why we call these ships Russian dolls." The second wave hit, but instead of finding more systems to disrupt, the quantum weapons encountered something entirely different. The Invincible's hull had become a complex web of quantum channels, redirecting the enemy's attack back through their own formation. Sir, Chen's voice carried a note of amazement. 3 enemy vessels just lost all power, their own weapon. We reflected it back at them. Reynolds moved to the tactical display, watching as the hegemony fleet's perfect formation began to break apart. They built their weapons to counter our known defense systems, but they forgot something important. What's that, sir? We don't just plan for the weapons we know about. We plan for the ones that haven't been invented yet. The battle that followed would be studied in war colleges for generations. The hegemony had built their strategy around defeating human redundancy, but they failed to understand why that redundancy existed in the first place. It wasn't just about having backup systems. It was about being ready for anything. Enemy fleet is launching their 3rd wave, Chen announced. They've modified their quantum signatures. Our previous counter won't work. Good, Reynolds replied. Implement Phase 2. Show them what happens when you force a human ship to get creative. The Invincible's response defied the laws of physics as the hegemony understood them. Systems that had appeared destroyed reconnected in new configurations. The ship's very structure adapted, using the enemy's quantum attacks as a power source for weapons that shouldn't have been possible. Multiple enemy ships breaking formation, Chen reported, her fingers dancing across her console. Their sensors, sir, I think we're actually frightening them. Reynolds watched as the once proud hegemony fleet began to retreat. Their perfect weapon, designed to finally break the human defense doctrine, had instead revealed just how deep that doctrine went. Send a message to Fleet Command, he ordered. Tell them the hegemony's new weapons are effective against standard configurations. But he paused, looking at the tactical display where enemy ships were still reeling from their own reflected attacks. Tell them we found a way to make those weapons work for us instead. As the last enemy ships fled the battlefield, Chen turned to her commander. Sir, how did we know? How did we have countermeasures for weapons that didn't even exist when this ship was built? Reynolds smiled, remembering an old engineer's saying. We didn't, but we built our ships on the principle that if something can go wrong, it will. So we made sure that when it did, we'd be ready to turn it into an advantage. The hegemony had sought the breaking point of human engineering. Instead, they discovered that the more they tried to break human ships, the stronger those ships became. Fleet Admiral William Cooper approached the podium in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, his dress uniform adorned with medals from a war that had changed the face of space combat forever. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed the evolution of human warship design, from their first space-worthy vessels to the latest dreadnoughts. Distinguished representatives of the galaxy, he began, his voice carrying through the vast chamber. You asked to understand why your perfect weapons failed against our imperfect ships. The answer is simpler than you might think. The display shifted to show the Battle of Proxima Centauri, where the hegemony's quantum disruptors had first been deployed. The gathered aliens watched as human ships, instead of being destroyed, adapted and evolved mid-combat. You built weapons to kill our ships, Cooper continued. But what you never understood was that our ships were never meant to be unkillable. They were meant to be survivors. A Methulian representative rose, their crystalline form refracting light. But your technology, the systems we never detected, were not technology at all. Cooper interrupted gently. They were philosophy made manifest. Every human child grows up learning Murphy's Law. The principle that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. We don't build ships to be perfect. We build them to be prepared. The display changed again, showing the internal structure of a standard human battleship. Layer upon layer of systems, some obvious, others hidden in plain sight, all interconnected in ways that defy convention. Notice the pattern, Cooper said, highlighting various sections. Each layer isn't just a backup. It's a new configuration waiting to be born. When your weapons destroyed our shield generators, you created power conduits. When you breached our hulls, you gave us new weapon ports. The council chamber erupted in murmurs as the display showed actual combat footage of these transformations. Ships that should have been crippled instead became more dangerous, their wounds becoming weapons. But the resource cost. A Volscian elder protested. The engineering complexity is nothing compared to the cost of losing a ship and her crew. Cooper replied firmly. You built your vessels to win battles. We built ours to come home. He gestured to the final display, a comprehensive analysis of the war's aftermath. Your forces consistently outperformed ours in the first minutes of every engagement. Your technology was superior, your tactics flawless. But wars aren't won in the first minutes. The statistics told a clear story. As battles dragged on, human ship performance actually improved, while their opponents' effectiveness dropped sharply after taking damage. This is why we're here today, Cooper said, his voice softening. Not to celebrate victory, but to share understanding. The greatest strength of humanity isn't our technology or our tactics. It's our acceptance that things will go wrong, and our determination to be ready when they do. The chamber fell silent as the final images played out. Human ships, scared but unbowed, returning home from battles that should have destroyed them. Each vessel a testament to the philosophy that had reshaped galactic warfare. The war is over, Cooper concluded, and with it, the old way of thinking about space combat. We invite you all to learn from our experience, to understand that true strength lies not in perfection, but in the ability to turn failure into advantage. As the council session ended, and Elder Crickstall approached Cooper, Admiral, one last question. In all our analysis, we never found the true limit of human ship resilience. Was there one? Cooper smiled, remembering every battle, every lost ship, every crew that had found new ways to survive. The only true limit, he replied, was our imagination, and that, Elder Crickstall, is the one resource that never runs out. The Galactic Council would spend years studying the lessons of the war, but they would never fully grasp the core truth. Human ships weren't built to be invincible. They were built to be as stubborn, as adaptable, and as determined as the species that created them. And in that truth lay a victory more complete than any weapon could achieve.